Good afternoon, everyone. And I want to thank the organizers of this program for inviting me. And as Bart has already said, I had my PhD from Wageningen University. I was with Public Administration and Policy Group. So I focus more on the governance aspects, looking at different governance operation in how we can make climate service more usable for farmers in Ghana. So my presentation is more or less going to be, it's linked to what Chris has presented, but I shall be providing empirical examples from my PhD research, postdoctoral research, and some works that I'm doing in Africa. And I also want to say that whilst just following the path of Chris, whilst I present some of the issues, at a point I'm just giving a caution. You might think, oh, I'm giving a solution to the food system. Then I muddy the water just to give the real picture of the situation on ground. Chris mentioned that transformation, we usually use the word, we think that transformation is synonymous to change, but as Chris presented, you know very well that when we say change, it doesn't necessarily lead to transformation. In the current food system, we are looking for a solution which brings about sustainability and inclusion. So, and some of the presentation or some of the innovations that are ongoing currently, as in Chris's presentation, you might see that this looks like a solution, but at the end of the day, does it really bring about or result in transformation? And also, what I want to say is that drawing from Chris's presentation, food systems have been transforming, albeit governed by several approaches. So my presentation will look at a top-down governance system using the agriculture extension provision in Ghana as an example. And I look at informational governance, digitalization of agriculture information, and I will look at different forms of hybrid governance, giving examples, and a last example which I'll provide is on cooperative or local governance. And I think some of this governance has been touched upon by Chris in his presentation, and my role is to give more of an empirical or my field experience in the communities and the rural communities. So my presentation, I look at the top mode delivery of agriculture extension and climate service delivery in Ghana. And mostly the approach is the home-based workshop and field demonstration. That is what is used in Ghana. So the field extension officer would visit the farmer in the house, and there's also a situation where we have a workshop where they invite farmers to come for the workshop, and then they also have a field demonstration. These are the three main extension delivery approaches. And when you look at these three approaches, you'll find out that there are challenges in the sense that we have gender norms and expectation and patriarchal values. For example, with my experience in most districts that I have visited, most of the extension officers are male, and you know cultural values of a young extension officer interacting with women. So just for cultural reasons, they are more prone to talk to male farmers. And there's also an approach in Ghana which is looking at lead farmer. So when there's an innovation, let's say Wageningen University has discovered an innovation on seed or how to control pest or disease, this is passed to the ministry, and then the ministry train the extension officers. And then they use the lead farmer approach, who is mostly someone who is educated, someone well-to-do, someone who is also connected to the rest of the people in the community, and then he shares the information to the other members in the farm in the community. But as I've mentioned, gender norms, and two, sometimes we also think that when we have innovations and we think that, okay, a farmer is married, even within the same household, information is not well spread because of various expectations, because of power play between even husband and wife. In my research, we talk to farmers, and I asked them, whom do you share information with? Mapping the information, you realize that a male farmer shares information with another male farmer in the community. Vis-a-vis you, and then this farmer is also married, but that information is not shared. Why don't you share information with your wife? Says, oh, I think she's not so much into farming. So then you think that, okay, there are different culture issues and gender norms, and also, just as Chris mentioned, mental perception also influence the extent to which information is shared regarding the food system, specifically here, climate information, agriculture extension. Now, to my right, or I don't know how you're seeing it. So I asked a question. So is there transformation or change occurring? So having seen this sort of approach, the weakness in the approach, there's a new innovation that is involving women, or inviting women to come for workshop, whether the extension officers prefer or not, they have to invite women to come for the workshop. And then we also have the WIA, that is Women in Agricultural Development. And then also another approach which involves training women to attend workshops and so on. But what we realize in my field research is that at the end of the day, even though they invite women, there is this issue of multiple position of gender and cultural issues. So we have intersectionality of seniority. So, when it comes to workshop and inviting people for workshop, there's a limited number. So we want to invite women. So the extension officer would invite a woman who is the senior lady in the house, who might be the first wife, or the grandmother of the other. So you realize that the other women in the household do not get access to information, or are not the first point of contact for the extension delivery or for the information. And also, when you observe again in the household, in a polygamous household, a senior wife is invited, and again, information sharing between first wife or co-wives is not the same. There's asymmetry, there's power relation, because I'm the first wife and I decide whether I share information with you or not, depending on the relationship within the household. So you will realize that even though a new solution or a new agenda of inclusiveness, agenda of inviting women to come, there's this class, religion, seniority, even among women within the household. So information does not reach the other members in the household. So what I've reflected on is that at the end of the day, maybe some of you are working with seed companies or NGOs and so on, and sometimes you think about this approach, but I want us to reflect that when we go to the rural communities and we want to introduce change, we should take note of the sociology of the community. You should note the culture, the sociology of the community. You might be thinking that it's very easy that once I select, let's say, Elizabeth to provide information, Elizabeth will give the information to everyone. But there are cultural issues. If I don't have a good relationship with Elizabeth, I do not get the information. Elizabeth will not talk to me. And so that's one thing we should reflect on. I want to also share another example about informational governance. While I present, I know that you ask yourself, so what is the role of ICT and digital technologies? Indeed, ICT and digital technologies are playing relevant roles in providing information to farming communities, albeit the challenges that I've mentioned. So we have the public TV, the radio, we have SMS from agripreneurs, for example, Isoko, and we have web platform, we have AccuWeather, we have GMET web pages, we have the community radio where Farm Radio International partners with some of these community radios to educate farmers. And we even have call centers where if I have my phone, I can call a call center, maybe operated by Isoko or M Farms, to get information. But what we realize that this creates a sort of informational governance where information flows from different angles. So that's what we realize, that information flows from different angles, and it bypasses the state agencies which in this case is the agricultural extension agent. And in this case, it appears that there's no one in control. And I quote the rector of Wageningen. It appears that no one is in control of what is provided to farmers. And we look at this situation where we think that we have ICTs and there's so much information available. But again, I want to muddy the water with this side of the presentation by indicating that, as we see, GSMA indicates that as at 2022, 40% of the global population, even though they are covered by broadband network, are still not using internet and other relevant aspects of ICT. Now, what is accounting for this change? We talk about unavailability of technologies. You realize that even though there's ICT, there's phone, and the publications indicates the increased adoption, it's not everyone who is able to afford the required technology like a smartphone, where maybe, for example, this program, someone really wanted to participate in this program, but for internet's sake, or for the fact that I cannot even log on using a Zoom link, it affects my participation in the global food systems transformation. And we can even talk about what I have also observed is capabilities. The ease of using a screen, a touch screen, just password, it's very difficult for some farmers. So even though we have innovations coming up to support farmers to transform the food systems, there are still certain challenges that we sort of sometimes overlook. Psychological, even sometimes you visit a farmer and it's like, I took a picture with you, but I can't find it on my phone. Can you show me where this picture is? So it looks simple. When you are a technocrat, it looks very simple that, look, I can give technologies to farmers to help transform the food system. But then we should also think about these mental issues which affect the governance of the food system. I give the third example. This is what we drew from my PhD research about the provision of information again, but this example it's not limited to climate information service. It can also be applicable to the seed sector and other innovation. So with hybrid information or hybrid governance, we found multiplicity of situation. And when we say multiplicity, a situation where, for example, you go to certain regions in Africa where you find state actors, civil society actors, you even find international NGOs, everyone is trying to provide services or trying as much as possible to steer transformation in the food system. So in certain regions, let's say, for example, in Ghana, which I would give example because I'm from Ghana. You go to the northern region, there is food security issues. So you find universities, NGOs, all playing roles. Now, the difference in this hybrid governance is that there is no agreement between one organization and the other. Everyone is trying their best. I use the word trying their best to transform the food system in that region. And I also came across a publication in northern Uganda. I think there are Ugandans here who can attest that in northern Uganda, there are different organizations all steering affairs in trying to bring about change or what we call transformation. Intertwinement is another form of hybrid governance where I give an example of the Kenya's climate smart agriculture multi-stakeholder partnership. There isn't any agreed form of partnership between government and civil society actors or consultancy group. We've all seen a problem in the country and we want to work together to transform the sector. So that's an example of intertwinement. And then the public-private partnership, which Chris mentioned. In this case, then there is a memorandum of understanding. We sign agreements, and I can give an example from Ghana, the Planting for Food and Jobs program, which is a partnership between Ghana, the government of Ghana, and then the Canadian government to provide seed and fertilizer at subsidized rates. So you can see that in this case, this form of hybrid governance, there is a difference between the first two that I have mentioned. And then we have coalescence, which that I found in Zambia. It's more associated. I can give an example with Harvest Plus, where the CGR provided or innovated a new seed, maize seed, the orange flesh maize. And after this innovation, they have to set up an organization sort of, which is not research organization, which is also not business, to promote the innovation. So these are forms of hybrid governance that you see promoting agenda or bringing about change in our food system sector in Africa specifically. Now, what are the implications for these forms of hybrid governance that I've mentioned? I would say that in some instances, it leads to a situation where state services or services provided by organization bypasses the state. So all we see is there are duplication of programs, and these programs are in silos. We see that this person is doing this organization is also doing the same thing. I will not mention organizations in this space, but we've seen this and over in international programs and so on. There's talk about we working together, connecting our innovation. What if I am working on the seed sector and I connect to Chris's innovation, also working in the same region, which is on another sector of the food system? Then we know where we are able to track progress and know where there are gaps in the food systems and also deal with some of the challenges that he mentioned. But this is currently really not evident on the field. Now, I give a last example about the cooperative.
Rebecca, you have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, this is my last slide.
Sure, thank you.
I give a last example about the cooperative or a small scale governance approach where I observe the tomato value chain. More often, we also say that women are weak, women do not have power, but it's also about us discussing which part of the value chain are women not having power. Now here I discuss that in the value chain, the trade sector, women have so much power that they determine the price of the tomato depending on the season, and they even determine which scale that farmers use. Now I give an example where in Ghana, where SMV introduced the plastic crates, which helps in packaging of tomatoes. But these women influence the process in my study district to kick against this innovation, because then it doesn't help them in the price, and also the amount of tomatoes that they get from the farmers, they are not able to negotiate good price for it. So you might be thinking that, okay, in the food system, maybe if we go cooperative, it can help, but then you find out that this cooperative system run by the women in Accra is so strong that they are able to determine how much price, how much we buy the tomato, and even the variety. So they determine the variety for the farmers. In my study district, they tell the farmers, this is what we want you to produce. And if the farmers fail to produce that specific variety, they don't buy it, or the price they buy it is very low. So if farmers want to adapt to climate change, you find that this cooperative system operating in Accra, running to the local level, influences which seed variety. So perhaps maybe Wageningen University has done very well in introducing an innovation, a seed that can adapt to a climate in that region. But then these women come in with this power to say, look, we want this type of tomato variety to be in the market. I reflect lastly on this slide by saying that I am supposed to reflect, but and conclude, but my slide is, as I mentioned. So what I want to say is that in the food system, taking a solution or taking one part of the solution is likely to lead to another challenge. And there are trade-offs in selecting solution. If you pick one side, you realize that another challenge is arising. So what I would say is dealing with the challenges in the food system, of the governance in the food system in an adaptive way. We always have to reflect constantly on which approach that we select. I would end here, and I think the question and answers time would give me more opportunity to elaborate and expatiate on vivid examples and food experiences. Thank you again.